What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, February 26, 2020, the middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday and whatever insanity is going to emerge from the South Carolina primaries here. Anyway, we have got a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. So let's just start right on into it. Obviously, last night, the big news was the debate, and it it deteriorated down to a rodeo. It was chaotic. The moderators lost control. People on Twitter were saying that it looked like a combination of the Jerry Springer Show, Real Housewives, and WWE wrestling. And Bloomberg was trying to come across as more of a real person, and he had a bunch of jokes he tried to tell that basically fell flat on their face. And it's obvious he didn't run these jokes past his political consultants, because all of these people, when they're on that debate stage, they've hired experts who are going to say, this is what you do, this is what you say, this is how you stand, this is where you put your hands. And it's this whole manufactured facade that they're trying to put on out there. And Bloomberg was making these jokes, and they weren't going over very well at all. So basically, it was an undignified mess. And CBS really kind of blew, because ultimately it was the fault of the moderators who lost control of the whole situation. Now, everybody was dogpiling onto Bernie Sanders, but he hit back and basically took care of himself. He handled the pressure very well. And he'd said before the debates began, he said, I'm ready to deal with front-runner pressures. And so, you know, good for him. Now, Joe Biden, of course, is out there. He's saying he needs this victory in South Carolina. Now, he used to have a commanding lead in the South Carolina polls. It has now shrunk down to just a few points. And between now and Saturday, it could reverse and put Bernie Sanders ahead. But we won't really know until all the votes are counted Saturday night, Sunday morning, whenever they're going to give us the final totals there. And but in the polls that were taken after the Democratic debate, Bernie Sanders came out on top. People are viewing him as the winner of the debate. Joe Biden had a good night, but not enough to come out on top there. CBS News poll said that Bernie Sanders made the best case to beat Donald Trump, with 26% naming him compared to 21% for Joe Biden. So whatever Biden wanted to do for this debate, whatever Bloomberg wanted to do for this debate, they did not succeed, not one little tiny bit. All right, as for Biden, something going wrong with him, because apparently Tuesday night, Vice President Joe Biden asked him to support his Senate candidacy. Well, I thought Biden was running for the White House, but he actually announced he was running for the Senate, and the voters are scratching their heads here. Former White House doctor Rennie Jackson is saying it's time for Biden to have some cognitive testing and make sure that his brain really isn't falling apart on him at his advanced AGE. And basically said that some of the stuff that Biden has come out with is absolutely scary. Now, Biden claimed that he worked with Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping on the Paris Climate Accord. The only problem is when the Paris Climate Accord was being negotiated and signed, Deng Xiaoping had been dead for 23 years. Oh, Joe, oh, Joe, oh, Joe. According to Biden, guns killed more people since 2007 than communism killed in the 20th century. So we get a gratuitous bash against Russia. And it's not really accurate anyway. In fact, Biden claims half the population of the United States has been killed by gun violence since 2007. Told you a million, billion, trillion times, do not exaggerate. We're going to take a phone call. Steve in Florida. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, I watched the debates a little bit. It took an hour of it, and it's about all I could stomach. But I was trying to figure out the missed opportunities by all the candidates to really go after Elizabeth Warren on her fraud. She kept emphasizing the non-disclosure agreements from Bloomberg and his stop and frisk, and she was really kind of brutal. I think she's really showing some desperation right now, as she's going to have to drop out here after a while, but her desperation of attacks. But nobody took the opportunity to say, you're fraud with trying to get into a certain college, which you did succeed in, saying you were Native American to getting in. That's fraud. And
Yes.
Here we're going after Hollywood elites whose children get in under fraudulent means to get into certain colleges. And just recently, I guess today, another one, Hot Pockets, the Hot Pockets Hirus on that one is going to go to prison for 5 months for doing the same thing. So we're going after, Hollywood elites who get their children into special schools by fraudulent means, and she did the same. Nobody's calling that out, which is amazing. This is a great opportunity to point out the fraud of Elizabeth Warren. Then you've got the fraud of her being fired for being pregnant. That did not happen. And then the fraud of actually trashing her own family member, her father, who was started off as a maintenance man, and now he ended up becoming a janitor. And there is quite a difference between a maintenance man and a janitor. Maintenance man has to fix a lot of things. He has an expertise, a skill set. Your janitor is mopping up urine, picking up emesis, all that other stuff that the maintenance man doesn't do. So, she's willing to trash her own family member, her own father, for God's sakes. She's a deplorable herself. And I thought it was just interesting that the candidates all missed a perfect opportunity to expose her again, and just as she's harping on non-disclosure agreements and stop and frisk, they need to do the same to her about her past.
Well, I think Warren is not really seriously in contention anymore if you look at her poll numbers, and I think everybody really was focused on getting Bernie Sanders and to a lesser extent getting Michael Bloomberg, and she just wasn't worth the ammunition for a shot.
Yeah, maybe so. I said she and Biden are both fading pretty dang fast here. She's lost steam, complete steam. They're showing their desperation right now with their attacks. They're very desperate at this point.
Yes, I would agree with that.
That's it for me, Mike. Have a great show. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And getting on back here, I think the fact that Warren did a flip-flop on the PAC money is another indication of how desperate she is. Her campaign is running out of money. It's running out of steam. And we might even see some people drop out after Saturday's South Carolina primary, but definitely we'll see candidates dropping out after Super Tuesday, which is now 6 days away, next Tuesday. All righty. So Bernie Sanders is taking a lot of flack for his support of communism, and in particular Fidel Castro. And it all comes from an interview he did where he basically came out and said, well, let's give credit where credit is due. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, here. And said, Fidel Castro, when he came to power, he started a literacy program because most of the Cuban people at that time could not read or write. And during the course of, his time in office, literacy just improved tremendously. The healthcare improved tremendously. In fact, Cuba has healthcare that's on a par with that of the United States. That bad, right? So, and it was funny because during the warm-up show for the debate, they had this little banner at the bottom saying Bernie Sanders, praised Castro for raising literacy in Cuba. And the first thing I thought is, I thought raising literacy was a good thing. And it's like, we don't want literate populations out there. They might actually start reading things like, whatreallyhappened.com and Republic Broadcasting. But they're out there literally trying to sell the idea that Castro was bad for improving the literacy of his people, raising their standard of living, and improving health care. But he's a cruel, evil tyrant. He's a dictator. We can't do business with them. Obama was wrong to end the embargo. It's just complete nonsense here. And he was also out there praising communist China, saying they've taken more people out of extreme poverty than any country in history. And they're just on him. So how can you do that? The commies are evil. We all knew that back in the 1950s. We were taught that in our school, how evil the communists were. And again, Bernie Sanders is a self-described democratic socialist, but so was Harry Truman. Harry Truman turned out to be one of the best presidents we ever had. So apparently the South Carolina crowd that was there at the debate, and apparently they had to pay something like almost $2,000 a seat for those tickets. And they booed Sanders because he was defending his remarks praising Cuba. And there's one thing I have to say I admire about Bernie Sanders. He sticks by his guns. Doesn't go out there, say something, when he gets a negative reaction, he backtracks and says, well, what I really meant to say is the exact opposite. Cuba's good. Oh, that doesn't go over very well. Or Cuba's bad. Bad, Cuba. No cookies. Break all your cigars and pour all your Cuban rum down the sink. Now, Cuba's official communist paper has praised Bernie Sanders for recognizing Castro's regime contributions in education and health. And one more thing, for all those people who are on Bernie Sanders' case for praising Fidel Castro is dead. He is gone. Okay? Can we all agree that we're going to start living in the 21st century? I mean, really. All right, Judge Judy is on the war path. She's out there saying America's the most perfect country on earth. That's one strike. And then she says, I'll fight Bernie to the death. I don't know. I'd put my money on Bernie Sanders. I'll even loan him the sword. Now, Pete Buttigieg gets taunted and chased out of a campaign stop that went horribly, horribly wrong. Apparently, he was doing a campaign stop at a union event in Charleston, South Carolina, and he got taunted by protesters, then basically chased to his car while trying to conduct a harried television interview. Now, Buttigieg, one of the things that may have led to the protests against him is that he's claiming Americans are buying weapons of war. And it's another illustration of how the gun grabbers don't really know a lot about guns. And during the debate last night, he suggested Americans buy and use guns built for warfare. And that, of course, is completely false. And he's basically harping on this old Democrat gun grabber claim that AR-15s are weapons of war, but they are not. The M16, which looks similar, is a weapon of war, but you can't buy one of those unless you have a special tax stamp. AR-15s are semi-automatic rifles. They're sporting rifles, and people like them because they're lightweight, and you can accessorize them. I would agree that you can't do with a more traditional Woodstock weapon. All right, we're going to take another phone call here. Paul in New Jersey, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, I always have to laugh when I hear the type, like a billionaire like Michael Bloomberg, when he says people love their health care. They love their health care. Now, the fact of the matter is I work in the private sector, and I hate my health care, to be honest. It's complete garbage. And I don't even buy, has there even been a poll among average non-governmental employees as to whether they like their health care? Here you got a billionaire. Of course, he loves his health care. And Donald Trump is going to love his health care. That's why he never did anything to reform health care. Then you got Rush Limbaugh, worth $600 million. He thinks health care is fine, too. And he even said today, or yesterday, something along like poo-pooing the effects of the coronavirus, and it's nothing more than a common cold. See, that's why these guys don't care about the coronavirus, and they don't care about health care. They got the best. They get to go to the most elite physicians, the best hospitals, when they fall ill. And so really
Absolutely.
the arrogance of these, now here it is, you got Bernie Sanders. Now, he of course wants socialized medicine, and I'll tell you this. I believe in socialized medicine for only one particular reason. And that is because every time I walk into a doctor's office, who do I see behind the counter? I see one nurse or attendant or clerk, and she signs me in. But then I see about 2 other women typically on the phone, and they're calling other health insurance agencies to work out the bills.
Yes.
You see, this is where Bernie understands it. And this is an indictment on capitalism and the healthcare industry. They've known for decades the system is a bureaucratic, Byzantine, backwards, inefficient system of basic parasitic people doing redundant bureaucratic bookkeeping and making tables and billing and calling the insurance companies and haggling over expenses and billing, all living off the patient and the patient's health insurance policy and what he pays in to his health insurance policy.
Yes.
And this is what Bernie understands. If we socialize the health care, we can unify the billing. Something the private sector never even gave a damn about the past 20 years. They never even cared. No politician had this simple mental fortitude to say, hey, can't we simplify the billing and make the many different insurance companies work together so we have standard billing practices, uniform like maybe one card each people carries, working with a similar system. So to simplify billing, nobody showed any initiative in the capitalist free market system. It took the dirty socialist commie Bernie to figure that out. You got it? And that's what's so sick about the capitalist people and who rave about the existence and the success of capitalism, and they sit there bad-mouthing Bernie. Yet what have they done? Here you got the quintessential capitalist as our president in there right now. He ran under making health care more simpler and bringing down costs. What has he done? Done nothing.
Blame the Senate.
Right, and blame the deep state. But meanwhile, Bernie, a few months ago, remember he took some people who were paying high for their insulin injections and took them over to Canada to show how in Canada you can get medication for about 1/8 the price that you can in the United States. But does Donald Trump care? No, he's a billionaire. Why should he care? Why does Mikey Bloomberg care? What's he care? That's what I'm saying about these people. So when Bernie Sanders wins, fellas, and don't put it past him, it can happen, fellas. All you commie haters out there, you should be getting real nervous because he can win. And all it takes is, like I said, this virus gets bad in the United States. I will be out there tying it around Donald Trump, fixing the blame right in the executive branch where it belongs. Because 3 weeks ago when the planes were coming over from China, all he cared about was his impeachment. That's all he focused on. And tonight at 6 o'clock, and by the way, Michael, I hope you're going to play his, put in a live feed at that hour for his
I can't. That would be an information violation. I can't. I thought about doing it, and then I checked, and we don't. RBN doesn't license that feed.
Too bad, because it should be free, because it's governmental. But I would love to hear you make snide comments when he's spouting out about this. And I'm sure what he's going to do is he doesn't want to alarm the markets, and he's going to say how the CDC is going to handle this, and we're right on it. But meanwhile, Michael, like I said a few days ago, I went again to flight arrivals coming into JFK. And do that. Look up where are the flight arrivals coming from. They're still coming from Italy. They're coming from South Korea. They're coming from Taiwan. They're coming from all these other hot spots.
Yeah.
But it's just a common cold to Rush Limbaugh, right? Donald Trump, if he gets ill, he'll be getting the best treatment around, while the rest of us, not so best.
Trump will be down to Walter Reed. All right, we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, Paul. Back with another call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And once again, a reminder, the Republic Broadcasting Network is holding a fundraiser right now. And we desperately, desperately need you to come on board and support us as we continue to try and get the truth and facts out there against a tsunami, a veritable tidal wave of lies, fraud, and deception coming at us from the government and the corporate media. So the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. I thank you. Donations are welcome at whatreallyhappened.com. And also, as you heard in the preceding spot there, we have a Facebook page. And you would really, all of you, including those of you who have financially contributed, if you would go to that page and send it on to your friends or send on a Republic, boy, it just started snowing outside heavily. If you could send that information to your friends, we need to grow our audience. We need to get more people tuning into what we're trying to do here at Republic Broadcasting. So thank you. All right. Wow, it is really coming down out there. Oh, my. Okay, anyway, we're going to go back to the phones. Joe in Tennessee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. I thought Bernie did actually really good in the debate last night, and I will applaud him for his bravery about the Israeli question. I mean, he really went after Netanyahu, and he called him a reactionary racist. And I mean, that took a lot of balls, excuse my French, but I mean, for a presidential candidate of either party to say something like that about Israel, I got to give him credit for because that's a ballsy thing to do, and that's really you're it's a very, like, it's the third rail of politics to talk out about Israel at all. And, to have him say what he said, I can't think of anybody else that would have had the political bravery to say that. And I'll give him applause for that. I thought that was a really good thing. And I'd like to see some people on the right, like, talk out about Israel more. But I guess it took a commie. What the previous caller said about health care, I mean, I don't see how socializing America's health care, like getting the government involved, ever really adding another layer of bureaucracy is going to improve matters at all. I mean, he talks about, having two people behind the desk talking to insurance companies. Well, they're going to have somebody in there from the state, and you're going to have somebody from the county, and you're going to have somebody from the federal government. I mean, when has the government ever run anything and had it more efficient? I mean, that's, I just think that, and the other thing that scares me about socialized medicine is, next thing money is green, right? Well, anybody it's colorblind, right? It's politically neutral. But you'll have countries like what's happening in England now, that if you're a racist or a homophobe, they can cut you off and not give you medical treatment. Now, in America, the rich get better.
They're already doing that in Great Britain. Great Britain's NIH is saying we can deny treatment if you're sexist or racist.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I take very politically unpopular positions. I have been for years. And if you want to empower the state, sooner or later you're going to get guys like way more radical than Bernie that are going to say, well, don't give any white people we're going to have medical reparations, and only black people can go in the great hospitals. And so whatever you want to say about our system, it's colorblind. It's about money. Now, it is better for the rich, but life has always been better for the rich. Rich always eat better. I got news for you. They get prettier women. They drive fancier cars. They got jet airplanes and yachts. So they're always going to get better stuff. If our health care goes to crap, they'll just get on their yacht and go to New Zealand or wherever. But that's not it. I mean, that's not the solution, is to worry about what rich people get in their health care. You got to look at what's going to be best for people in general. And I look at it like the problem with our health care is there's too much health care. In other words, people will go to see their doctor over every little damn thing, and some of it is overly expensive, and because they don't have to pay for it, they go and they get all these tests instead of like you'll find like it'll be 10% of the people, like when you're part of like a health plan, like I am was with my union. It'll be 10% of the people, and it'll be their wives that go and get their toenails cut and do all the tests. They're like hypochondriacs, or they figure it's not their money, so and they never crack down on people like that. You'll find it. I tell you, there's probably 10% of the people that spend 90% of the money with my union.
Joe, I got to cut in here because, it's better for people to err on the side of the caution and go to see their doctor when they think something might be wrong. And I'm exactly the opposite. I hate doctors. I hate hospitals. And this last little thing that I was dealing with, I almost waited too long. And literally, I was dragged to the doctor by family members. They said, you got to go. There's something seriously wrong here. So anyway, listen, Joe, we got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. I'm looking out the window here at the snow is coming on down. They were predicting heavy snow for the northern part of the state, but obviously it has reached down here to the south. And, I think over in the distance, I see Al Gore with a hairdryer going, come on. That's not snow. It's just white, lumpy rain. Anyway, we're going to go back to the phones to Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. It's snowing where I am, too. It is. It looks to me like it's lumpy rain. When yesterday and today, it started getting cold up here again. And, the first thing I always say is all the carbon Nazis are just going nuts. They want it to get warmer because, obviously this sort of thing doesn't reinforce their nonsense. But universal health care, I'm a part of it. And universal health care, another word for it is portioned health care.
Yes.
And I've been a part of that. I've had to wait 14 months for operations on both my hands. And, now there's permanent nerve damage. I went through this a long time ago with you. And the thing is, it doesn't matter whether you're paying an insurance company or there are a bunch of freeloading government bureaucrats. The hand that gives is always above the hand that takes.
Yes.
And that's the way it's always been, and it won't change because we are a very immature species. If we manage not to kill ourselves in the next century or two, we might overcome all this crap. I somehow doubt it, though. So,
well, the big problem, the reason this is such an issue is because healthcare has become so expensive in the United States. And part of it, of course, are all the additional layers of bureaucracy, calling the insurance companies, the mandates for record keeping from Obamacare. And yes. All of it, of course, goes back to the Health Maintenance Organization Act that was signed by Richard Nixon
yes.
on behalf of his friends over at Kaiser Permanente. And that was the law that removed caps from medical services and turned it into just another for-profit corporation. And that's why we have, TV advertising for prescription medication. We have invented diseases for which they sell imaginary cures. And they're preying on people's fear of illness and disease. And maybe all this stuff about COVID-19, which they're now calling the Wu flu, it could be to sell us some other medication just down the road. They're going to announce, we have a vaccine here, and everybody's going to stampede over. And if you remember the reality of Tamiflu back in 2009, it's like we've returned to the days of patent medicine and the traveling medicine shows.
Yep, all spearheaded by the CDC.
Right. Who are complaining they're not getting enough money from the federal government.
Yeah, shame on us for not going out, every single one of us, and getting every single shot that they recommend because they hold the patent on them.
I'll tell you, when I was going through my recent medical care, I had so many needle tracks on my arm, I was wearing long sleeve shirts because I didn't want people to think I was a junkie.
You should have said, just take a pint, hang a pint, and just be off with you now.
I still got a bruise here, but they botched an IV. That's going to take a while to go away.
It was so it was either what do they call not a resident, like a new doctor. What do they call them again? I haven't watched those shows in years. You know what I'm getting at with that, but Or you're actually having problems with your veins because you're being stuck so much, right?
Well, according to the nurse who did this, she said, "Boy, your veins are really slippery. Boink, boy, keeps moving around. Boink." I said, "Wait a minute, Captain Ahab. Let's pull off and try a different approach here." But all's well that ends well, and I'm doing a lot better. And again, in 6 months, this is all going to be gone.
Yeah. So this healthcare thing. Yeah, if you take all of the cash that people pay in insurance and you add it all up, what does it really come to? And honestly, your country, I mean, there's a lot of problems, but there's a lot of problems with every country. It's still one of the freest on the face of this planet. Do you really want some government idiot dictating to you, the people that live in the United States, how to live your life?
Well,
right?
I know
freedom?
we look at the VA and how badly that's being run. And I know a lot of people complain about the complexity of Social Security, but overall, that system seems to work fairly well. And I think government can do an efficient job if they put their minds to it and get away from all the federal and the corruption stuff. But the system that we have right now is not working for the people. It's working for the medical corporations, what I call the medical industrial complex.
And that's what it is. It's part of your GDP. It's like $2.5 trillion, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. But like what you said there about the medical industrial complex, that's exactly what it is. It's the same. It's the same up here. It's just smaller. And as far as prescriptions being cheaper, well, are they? I mean, a lot of stuff is being what's that word? The government gets involved. And yes, it's being subsidized. So you don't even hear about it sometimes, and most people don't even care. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't care. They just stick their phone back up to their face, and they're sucked right into social media and all the stupid nonsense, and they don't see anything that's going on around them. So, but one of the good things about socialized healthcare is now that the tax base is paying for it, you tend to want to stay healthier, knowing that we're paying for it. So you have little things like a better, workers' compensation laws and those sorts of things, so that that guy over there that's on that skyjack with no harness on, well, you're fired. Now you tend to work safer, and I know the American people were up here when I worked at a place, and they were just shocked at everything that we have to do, like confined space training and lift training and all this stuff, and it all has to be up to date. And there's no scrimping as far as safety is concerned in the workplace up here, unless of course you're an illegal immigrant. And so that's one of the good things of it. But there are so many bad. It's like, where do you start? Like the waiting, unless you're important. Or you pay to go down to the States, right? I could have paid. I had the surgery on my hands, right? And the plastic surgeon, when I went for the second time, he asked me, how much do you think I get for doing this? It took about half an hour for start to finish, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know, $2,500. He started laughing. He goes, no, really, you think that? And I said, yeah, why? Why would he get? $150. I said, well, why am I going through all this bullshit? I should just give you the cash right out of my pocket and be done with it. There, no layers. It used to be like that. That was better.
No, the vast majority of the money that is paid in for medical care goes into the bureaucracy. And, I have a family member who is a doctor, which is why our medical care is now timely. I mean, one of the reasons we left Oahu is when Claire injured her back, she suffered a compression fracture. It was 3 months before we could get into Straub and have her looked at. And so for 3 months, she was like in incredibly intense pain, and we didn't know what was going on, and we couldn't find out.
What about going to emergency?
We went to the What's the McDonald's of medical care? The urgent care units. And we went there, but they couldn't tell us what was going on.
Yeah, that's how it is up here too, Mike.
But they did give us
and
a
it's socialized
side
medicine. So a lot of people die because of those sorts of things, right? They go to emergency because of this and that, and they have these people that either don't care, they're tired, they're overworked, they're just not good enough, and all these people, their illnesses slip through the cracks, and next thing you know, well, you can't work anymore because we have to go inside your brain and noodle around, and you're going to be just an idiot afterwards. I know a friend just like that. So there are positives and negatives to single payer healthcare, universal healthcare, if you want like to call it, or socialized, and the kind of healthcare there is in the United States. Like your last caller, was it Joe in Tennessee, said the rich, they can afford to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And it's always been like that. So that's where you've got to start, right there. And socializing, $40 trillion in taxing, the rich folk and corporations out of the yin-yang is only going to result in one thing, a diminishing tax base, because they're just going to say bye, and they'll leave.
Yeah.
There's got to be a better way, and the better way is
not just the rich,
currency at all.
Even middle-class people are starting to desert the high-tax areas, because they just can't handle the burden anymore. That was a major reason we left Hawaii. And I do miss Hawaii. I miss the hula girls, but, the cost of living here is just so much lower. And the access to medical care is so much better. And the food is fresher because it hasn't spent a week in a shipping container. Anyway, listen, Al, we're going to let you go here. We got
Thank you, Mike.
Calls are piling up here. And we're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. What's on your mind today?
It's Dustin, the fake news person from New Jersey. Mike, Al's right. Like, when it comes to it doesn't matter. We're not capitalists here. We're corporatists, which is fascism. But all the fascism, communism, socialism, capitalism, whatever you want to call it, it all has the weakest link. Like Al said, is just human beings. Everybody's out to just make a buck and get ahead and screw everybody else. That's what it comes down to. So you can have
everybody, but enough
not
where
everybody.
It's a problem.
Yeah, but Mike, you can have the best capitalist system in the world, and it's always one human being that's going to muff it up, right? Or communism or social. So it's not the systems that are the problem. That's why I get mad at Tom when he calls ripping on Venezuela or Cuba. Lift the sanctions. That's all you got to do. Lift the sanctions and leave them alone. Let their system flourish or fail on their own. Don't put your 2 cents in to try to rip the system apart. I mean, look at what we're doing with Venezuela. They got a fake.
Here's the reason. Here's the reason. Okay, let me interrupt you here, and I apologize for that. Obviously, the fascist corporatist system works very well for the ultra rich, and because money is addicting, they want to have more of it. And if somebody were to make, shall we say, a socialist system work in another country, then we here in America might say, well, let's try that, because the ordinary people are doing a lot better under socialism than they are under fascism. And that's why the United States goes on out and destroys countries that have alternative systems, just so that we American people, we taxpayers, don't get uppity ideas about maybe finding a different way to spend the money.
And we'll use these tactics, like with sanctions on Venezuela, where we put that fear. And which leads me into Trump, because Trump, they set up this fake, the embassy, where they got fake people not even given any visas to Venezuela, with Guaido and his fake group. Guaido is the legitimate president of. No, he's not. Anybody who voted for Trump. Nobody believes that, but Trump says it, so some Trump supporter must believe it, Mike. I just don't understand. Because, like I said, I'm a Democrat. I voted for Trump, but he pulls this crap. And Mike, by the way, what do you think he's going to say at 6 o'clock today? I just think he's going to do a Naked Gun Leslie Nielsen thing, where there's a fire in the house, and in the background, He's going to say, nothing to see here. Move on. Buy more stocks. Buy more stocks. Yeah, you know, because that's all he's got to run on now is the stock market, because he blew it with the wars because there's still troops over there. Oh, no, those troops, I did pull troops out. But he didn't tell anybody that the other ones he brought back in to relocate the troops that were in Syria.
Yes.
The guy's a fraud, man. Like, I mean, come on. You know, he gave Israel everything they wanted. He gave all these weapons to Saudi Arabia. And how can people still support this dude? I don't hate Trump. I'm just pissed off at him. Like, because he's not doing what... Well, Mike, everything he ran on...
I agree with you. I agree with you.
He ran... Mike, everything he ran on, people need to go back in 2016. And I said it before, Trump's got more flip-flops than John Kerry and Walmart combined. He's a flip-flop king. I mean, everything he ran on is flipped over opposite. And Mike, by the way, do you know who's in charge of the CDC? He's going to have on tonight some woman. Isn't that Rob Rosenstein's sister? Supposedly?
I thought Rob Rosenstein's sister... You know, I heard something about that. I did hear something about that, yeah.
Isn't that crony capitalism at its best? Like what's changed from Obama, Clintons, and the Bushes? They all put people in who are friends of my uncle's cousin's sister. You know, like none of these people know anything. They just get in because of who your political connections are. But like I said, when I call in all the time, what's changed, Mike? Nothing. You know, where's the tax breaks for the average American? You know, the middle class that's shrinking. You know, where's the border wall that's non-existent? I hope somebody calls in from San Diego and gives us some updated. Have you heard anything on the border wall? Anybody? Like, there's nothing, no news anymore. and I was reading on the Drudge Report the other day how it's like the border patrol is releasing a mass amount of people. Like, why? I thought Trump put these people in to not release them. So I don't trust Trump anymore. I don't believe him. I don't like him. I don't hate him. I don't like Obama and Bush, the Clintons. They're all the same, Mike. Like, nothing's been fixed. It's like we're dragging on and on. But tonight's going to be a big test for Trump. I'm going to see where he goes with this virus thing. If he says everything is okay, that's bunk. Because,
well, unfortunately, he's going to be doing his press conference during the third hour of my show, so I'm not going to be able to watch it. But I will hope that some people will send me in basically a précis of what it is he says. But yeah, I'm expecting him to say it's not that serious. Anyway, listen, Dustin, we got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the telephones to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I was calling in. I sent you just about 20 minutes ago. I sent you two articles by Whitney Webb. One was Wall Street behind the timing of the government's response, U.S. government's response to COVID-19, which of course. Somebody that one of the previous callers just talked about the stock market and COVID, and so that's a plausible thing. The other is Israel strengthens its hold on U.S. Intelligence with its new director of national intelligence, the top intelligence guy, Grinnell. And I want to point out, Mike, a couple things here. We already know what the position is. About the media and who controls what we see and hear, and we know what goes on with the dollar and what we spend and our credit and everything else, and who controls the banks and all that stuff. We also know who are the biggest donors, private donors in the campaign on both sides of the aisle, Republican, Democrat. The biggest donors are Jewish billionaires, and now we also know that AIPAC has come out against Bernie Sanders, who himself is Jewish.
Yes.
And we've got Bloomberg, who's another Jewish billionaire, who's the other plausible, candidate for the Democrats. And that John, what is his name, Steyer? is also a Jewish billionaire, hedge fund manager. He's Jewish as well. So we've got two Jewish billionaires, a Jewish socialist. We've got AIPAC weighing in, and the intelligence community, by the way, weighing in also as they're attacking Bernie Sanders. And the intelligence community is intruded in the elections, and now, of course, Israel is strengthening their hand there as well. So it's just, I just want to point this out, and now you're saying, as Dustin was saying, Rod Rosenstein's sister runs the CDC. You know, and you know, then you find out that, for instance, that Harvard, the president of Harvard is Jewish, and they take over these major institutions, and Harvard has $40 billion in assets, right? They have a $40 billion endowment. And where do you think that endowment money goes to? Jewish hedge fund billionaires. They get richer. And it's important to draw these, and I know I sound like a broken record, but look what's going on in this country. And then, of course, our president, who proclaims himself the King of Israel. So it's just, it's worth reminding people constantly, because it's hidden, but it's also in plain sight.
Yes. Yeah, it's, you know, I remember as a kid in elementary school being warned against communist subversion of our government and our nation. And so we were always looking at the Russians, the Soviet Union, and, oh, are they trying to subvert us? And now we find out subversion was coming someplace else. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to go ahead and take another phone call. This one from Keith Rogers. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Michael, it has been refreshing to hear your last 3 callers. I'll say that. I'd like to start off with, you remember when Michael Moore went to Cuba with that boatload of Americans?
Oh, yeah. That was, you know, I have this love-hate relationship with Michael Moore because half his films I really love, like Canadian Bacon, and the other half I don't. I absolutely loathe them.
Right. Well, you have to realize, when you listen to ex-CIA agents, Philip Agee, or ex-CIA agent John Stockwell, about what the United States has done to Cuba,
yes,
as well as even Noam Chomsky brings this out about the amount of resources that the United States uses to make sure that an ounce of nickel is not shipped from Cuba so that they can support their economy, so that the United States can, like Venezuela, say, hey, they're eating their pets, you know. But anyway, this is like the 50, I guess it is, cases over in Iran right now, where the U.S. sanctions also cover medical supply. This is all done in your name. Just like the 122 Air Force that have committed suicide in 2019 and 2018, 57 Marines, the 22 Special Ops, it's all done in your names because they're out there fighting these illegal wars. But the problem with that is, I was going to draw a conclusion to this. You know, Trump's relationship with India right now is in the news, isn't it?
Yes. Okay,
so is Israel's. Oddly enough, I want to read you just a little thing here. It's a letter from an AT&T worker who's now lost their jobs, who have to train their replacements. And there's a lot of racism in here to where they can't even shake hands of these Indian replacements and stuff. They can shake hands with the male ones like that, you know. But what was interesting here is where he says, as an employee of AT&T for over 25 years, I will be 60 this year. At the end of 2019, many of the workers in my office were notified that they were being outsourced to Amdocs. Who is Amdocs? Remember Carl Cameron of the 9/11 videos. See? This also has to do with your last caller talking about those like, say, billionaire Phil Singer, who with AT&T is buying up all these Latin American countries, these telcos, and all those neighboring islands to put in their own telephone systems through Amdocs. But the issue here is the massive amount of sanctions placed on others, which caused, like in Iraq, 500,000 children to die. This was done in your name. The starving down in Venezuela, the blown up power plants. I mean, the CIA has outlined exactly what they've done. And of course, whenever these guys come forward, they're treated like Julian Assange or Snowden. They're traitors to their country. But this is what's really going on. And you have those at the top that do not want this stuff exposed because they'll lose control over what the American psyche is. That's why I've named my show Perception Management. Because if you look that up in the dictionary or on Wikipedia there, you'll see what it is. It's a snow job from the military. But anyway,
that's a good name for your show.
All these sanctions, yeah, all these shows that I've done highlight the mass deception. I got an email today where I sent off a article from Covert Magazine, who was being sued by the CIA, who was trying to keep Congress or having Congress to shut them down because they were exposing the biological warfare that the United States has used all through Latin America, down through Laos, Cambodia, and then blaming yellow rain on the Soviets. And of course, it was found out that when these guys went forward, they were supposed to go down there and allegedly rescue these Americans that were missing in action and then told to kill them. They realized it was a snow job cover-up thing to try to frame the Soviets in. And this has been going on in our names. And until people wake up and realize that when you tell people that something that goes on, they say, our country would never do that. Well, apparently they would. Of course, it's not actually those in power. What it is it's like these big firms that, whether it's, John Perkins brings this out, that hold the massive amounts of sway in all these banana belt areas there where they can bring in their plantations and their big cattle farms from McDonald's and put the American farmer out of work, But it's these corporations that have been behind this, and the CIA has been facilitating this for years to depress those economies to where they work for nothing on these slave labor and usually working on their own lands. And so when you have mass immigration and stuff like that, it's for people trying to be able to support their families because they can't find jobs, or they are trying to flee, as you mentioned earlier, the fascist regimes that the United States installs in those areas to be able to control the commerce. And so it's all systematic of what's really been going on in this country, as well as Western-linked ones, to where the massive amount of, whether it's immigration, poverty, sanctions, they all apply, and then now you can see what's happening. Finally, Americans are getting a taste of what's happening. We know how many CIA have been running in the elections.
Yes.
They've all been linked to it, see? So, what was done abroad is now being done at home. So get used to it. When you read the LA Times article that the United States has interfered in over 81 elections up until the year 2000, now add another 10 years on that, that what they've done to foreign countries, they're now doing to this country. So get used to it. If you don't like it, I don't think voting is going to change because as you've even brought out that hacking democracy video, it's all fixed.
Well, see, the problem is the people that we're electing don't have the gonadal tissue, as it were, to stand up to the CIA. It is a rogue agency. I mean, the last president who took on the CIA was John F. Kennedy.
Exactly. And that's why all these Epsteins and whatever like that come out to play. I mean, there's a plethora of these college videos of these boys doing favors for, I'll just say favors to make it clean, and of course that all translates later on to where they think they've got it made, but they get out of college, they realize they can't get a job, they join the military, things look good, they get a wife and a couple children, and then comes the blackmail.
Yes.
So, it's sad, but, that's exactly how everyone's controlled nowadays.
Well, thank goodness I
just
had
wanted to share that.
Tame and colorless childhood. That's all I can say. All right. Well, thanks a lot for the phone call, Keith. And we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And back to the phones to Andy in Texas. Andy, what's on your mind today? Andy, are you there? Going once, going twice. Guess we lost him. All right, so getting on back to the news here. Michael Bloomberg had a little bit of a Freudian slip, as you I guess you could call it here, where he made a comment, and this is a direct quote from Bloomberg. Let's go on the record. They talk about 40 Democrats, 21 of those people that I spent $100 million on to help elect. All the new Democrats that came in that put Nancy Pelosi in charge and gave the Congress the ability to control this president, I got them. So people are saying, and that's exactly what he did. 21 representatives, 21 Democrats, $100 million. Yeah, he bought the Congress. He bought the House of Representatives. My goodness. All right. Apparently, 8 Democrats and independents in Mississippi have now switched parties to Republican. The leaders are expressing concern over socialist Bernie Sanders. They do not want him in that nomination, but it looks like he may well win. He could do it. Now, Walter Koenig, who is this actor from Star Trek, the original series, he played Chekhov, is out there bashing Trump voters, saying it's a heinous moment in American history. And it's kind of weird how many of these people are coming on out with this foaming at the mouth liberalism. And they weren't like that when I knew them or worked with them. You know, they were a lot mellower and calmer. So I don't know maybe there's something in the water out there in Hollywood here. All right, Jewish activists shut down the Biden headquarters to demand that he skip the AIPAC conference. So activists and their supporters descended on Biden's Philadelphia campaign office this morning to demand that the presidential candidate skip American Israel Public Affairs Committee's annual policy conference. The protests come just weeks after the progressive groups Move On, Indivisible, and Working Families Party formed a coalition to encourage all Democratic candidates to skip the event. See, support for Israel is beginning to erode. Friend of Israel is now becoming a liability in the elections. Now, earlier this week, Democratic frontrunner Bernie Sanders said he would not attend the AIPAC conference and accused the pro-Israel organization of providing a platform for bigotry. The lobbying group called Sanders' decision shameful. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren also said she would skip it. Biden says he will be attending. He wants that Jewish money. He wants that Jewish vote. Little article that's coming on out from Zero Hedge. Okay. Okay. Before we get to this next story, Andy is back on the line here. Andy, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. No, I'm sorry I wasn't able to pop in when I was supposed to. But hey, I'm very curious. So we get this Democratic Socialist guy. He wins the election. His name's Bernie Sanders. And when he's at the podium and he takes his oath of office, what is he taking an oath to?
He's taking an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to same.
And do you really think with his policies that's exactly what he's going to do?
Probably not, but then I don't know any president that's really adhered to the Constitution in recent memory.
Well, I know, and Donald Trump's no exception. You know, with his little red flag laws and stuff with the guns and whatnot, which that's amazing that he comes out on national TV and says, well, we should take the guns and then ask questions about it and then get, due process. And that just scurries around the country to all these different states, okay, because he said it, now all of a sudden that's law. He didn't even do an executive order on that. He just put out a red flag law over some press conference, and then boom, every state's doing this. And did you notice that in Virginia, after our 40,000 people showed up with their guns and whatnot, they turned around and they kicked back some of their laws, but they passed 2 different laws, a red flag law and a law regarding the sales of private weapons and whatnot. I mean,
okay.
so,
Well, first of all, Trump did not pass a red flag law. It's not a national law, as you yourself said.
no, he
These are
didn't.
the states these are the states that are jumping on board the gun grabber agenda. The problem I have with red flag laws is we can all agree that there are certain individuals who probably should not be allowed access to firearms for their safety and for the safety of those around them. The problem is these red flag laws can be abused, and there's no safeguards for law-abiding gun owners to protect themselves from having their guns taken.
Well, that's my point, is that all he said it in a press conference, and then all these different states jumped on it like it was some sort of law. Okay, so these people, I mean, Washington State, West Virginia, or not West Virginia, Virginia, Florida has done it. I mean, they're all over this place with this red flag laws, and it all came, where did that even statement come from? It came from Donald Trump, red flag, red flag. If we think these people are mentally, no, I'm with you, bro. I mean, as far as people who are mentally handicapped, they should not have a gun. But 90% of the people that they're taking guns from, and there is several of these things that are going on around the country. Sorry, I don't have my book in front of me with all the statistics, but they're taking guns from people because somebody said, dude, you're over there shooting at some targets and you're scaring me. Boom, they come out and take this person's guns. It's past a joke. So, I mean, we're in this position right now where there's absolutely no reason for what's going on.
Well, it's like Bloomberg is trying to justify his stop and frisk, saying it got out of control. And clearly we're seeing the same thing happen with the red flag laws. Now, of course, it all depends on where your hypothetical shooter is shooting at the targets, because if he's doing it in his backyard, that's a tacky no-no unless he lives right next to a hillside that can act as a backstop. If he were to go to a gun range and target shoot there, then it's completely inappropriate for the neighbor to say, you're scaring me. And unfortunately, the anti-gun hysteria has reached a point where a lot of people are saying just the fact that you own a gun makes you makes me afraid of you. And
well, what part of shall not be infringed are we? I mean, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the free state of America, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I mean, what part of that is second grade or lower unavailable? I mean, come on.
Well, there's no question the Second Amendment has been infringed quite a bit over the last several years. And what they're trying to do is make sure that we, the American people, are inferior in arms to the government's forces, which, of course, is not the intention of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is not about target shooting. It is not about hunting to put food on the table. It is about making sure the citizenry has arms equal to those of the government itself. And the Supreme Court has ruled on this many times throughout the history of the nation, saying that the Second Amendment reserves to the American people the same weapons carried by the uniformed services.
And I think where they're getting messed up is because we hear this well-regulated militia. Well, they're believing that the government should regulate the militia. No, the militia is the people, because back in 1776, we put together a bunch of people that had weapons and whatnot, and we were the militia. And a well-regulated militia means that they could be called to service when we were needed it to be, a part of, making sure that we stayed free. And so today, where are we?
Well, again, under U.S. law, the militia is every able-bodied American citizen. I think between the age of 18 and 40, you're considered part of the unorganized militia. And the term well-regulated back in 1776 meant well, not controlled, not bound. And what is really kind of angering about Common Core is they've completely rewritten the Second Amendment to make it sound like only a government-controlled militia is allowed to have weapons, which is, I'm sure, what the government wants to have.
Well, Common Core has actually rewritten history entirely, to be honest with you. I mean, 9/11, my kids went through school for this 9/11 stuff, and the story does not coincide with what the truth is. You know, and the Civil War is not just about slavery, but that's what they're pushing, and so our kids and everybody that's running around this country right now that has, let's say, post 9/11 education, their understanding things Common Core has really screwed us up.
Yep, it really did, and there was a reason why the parents were not allowed to look at the curriculum. Because the parents would have stood up and said, wait a minute, this is not accurate, this is not true, this is not education, it's indoctrination.
And the same thing is coming with these homeschooling and whatnot. Now you can homeschool your kids, and there's several different platforms you can get on to homeschool your kids, but these platforms have to be in line with Common Core.
Yes, that's definitely true.
So you still end up with a bad education. Thank you, Mike. Have a great day.
All right, thanks, Andy. We're going to take another break for commercials. Back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Ken in New York. Aloha, Ken. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I think there's a very simple answer to the problem of what does the word infringed mean, and that's the wordsmithing that goes on in the legal profession. That has to be stopped or controlled. Where you get the case whereas Ralph Winterode says dog can mean cat and cat can mean dog for the purposes of this legislation, unless you specifically use the term means. All of these games that are played, so they'll turn around and come up with some excuse why it doesn't mean it's being infringed on.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that from the gun grabbers before, that, you know, registration isn't an infringement, limiting the size of magazines is not an infringement. Of course it's an infringement. Anytime that our weapons are being deliberately weakened so that we cannot stand against tyranny, that's an infringement.
You got it. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to go to Anthony in Toronto. Aloha, Anthony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I just wanted to talk about Bernie Sanders and the criticisms coming from the right, you know, calling him a communist and so forth. Now, the only thing I'll bring up is this. When you look at issues in the United States, for example, drug prices, ridiculously expensive, because you have corporations that lobby politicians. It's the same with health care. You don't have a true free market in health care because, insurance companies can't compete across state lines. They buy out politicians, and healthcare costs are through the roof. Now, what Bernie Sanders is doing, at least, is he's addressing these high cost issues. Now, his approach might not be optimal because he's taking a big government socialized approach to dealing with these issues, but at least he's talking about them. And my criticism of people on the right and even some libertarians is that they'll go, you know, Bernie Sanders is a communist, whatever. Okay, his solutions might not be optimal, but what are you doing to address these problems, these high costs? You don't have a free market on these issues. And what's happening is people on the right are saying he's a communist, but they seem to be satisfied with the status quo. So the one thing I will say is whether you like a solution or not, you know, if Bernie Sanders does win the nomination, at least he'll bring these issues to light and at least address the high cost. Now, like I said, his solutions might not be optimal, but you do have a corporatized system. The costs of all these services are extremely high. Now, I would personally probably put a public option to compete with private just to keep the cost low, and then people have, you know, can decide whether they want to opt in without being forced into a public healthcare plan, but at least that'll create competition in the market. Those are the kind of things I would personally put through. But, you know, just saying that, you know, he's a communist, he's a socialist, I kind of see this all over social media. I think it's short-sighted, and those issues need to be addressed. And just saying, you know what, Bernie, is a communist. And the only thing regarding Bernie, I actually didn't mind some of his policies even 5-10 years ago. The only issue is now is he seems to, you know, some of the social justice warrior stuff has seemed to have got to him. He was really good on immigration. I think 5-10 years ago, he talked about, you know, how illegal immigration lowered the wages of workers. He was against identity politics, saying that it was poisoning it. But it seemed then 2 years ago, he's saying, white people don't know how it feels to be poor, which is, is a stupid comment. And he seems to be for amnesty now a lot more than he was in the past. So he's not, I think he's fallen further, but when you compare him to the rest of the Democratic bunch, I think at least he still talks about some issues, which will be good, compared to the other candidates.
Well, overall, I'm in agreement with you. And, my interest in the upcoming election is primarily keeping Hillary out of the White House. But once we're assured that Hillary is not going to be in the running here, I'm kind of torn whether I would support Trump or if I would support a Sanders presidency. Not that we seem to be able to change anything no matter who's in the White House, of course. But like I said earlier, the one thing that I really like about Sanders is once he states a position, for the most part, he tends to stick with it, such as this praising Cuba's health and education systems.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. I guess he is with that. You know what I mean? There's certain positions, like I said, you can disagree or agree with him, but at least he's talking about, some of the issues that are affecting working class people. Now, for me, I'm more of a free market guy. I would rather have the free market deal with a lot of these issues. But if you're comparing socialism to corporatism, I don't know if corporatism is that much better, and that's what you have in the U.S. And I think this is big problem that some on the right ignore, is that, okay, I don't like socialism, fair enough. Like, I wouldn't go as far as saying I don't think Bernie Sanders is a full-out communist. I don't think he wants to put everything under government control. I think it's a bit of an exaggeration that some on the right will say, but at the end of the day, if the corporatism isn't addressed in terms of in industries like healthcare and drugs and etc., socialism is probably what they're going to get. So that's something they need to think about.
Okay, well, listen, Ken, I got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials. Got another caller waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And that was my mistake. That was Anthony we were talking to just before the commercial break, not Ken. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And getting on back to the news here. Now, right now, according to this article that came out of Zero Hedge, less than half of Americans have faith in the elections. Between all the cheating that we've seen going on, blackboxvoting.org, hacking democracy, and the rest of it, many Americans have lost confidence in our elections. And one of the areas in which I'm very, very disappointed in Donald Trump is he came into office promising he was going to reform the election system. He was going to get the crookedness out of it. I even wrote an instruction manual on how to have honester elections. I'm not saying my system is perfect, but it makes cheating very, very hard, and it makes the detection of cheating very, very easy by crowdsourcing the verification. And if you go to my webpage up there on the upper left, right underneath that hideously outdated photograph of myself, there's the article, How to Have Honest Elections. And I think this being an election year, probably all of you ought to take a look at that. Anyway, during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on Tuesday, Republican Senator Ted Cruz compared left-leaning Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor to an arsonist and turned her complaint against her fellow justices on his head by saying, like an arsonist complaining about the noise from the fire trucks. So, anyway. Okay. In India, CNN's Jim Acosta goes on a grandstanding spree, and he attacks Donald Trump, saying, I think our record, meaning CNN's record, of delivering the truth is a lot better than yours. I would take that bet, Jim. I seem to recall CNN was right there on the forefront of claiming that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons and biological weapons, and that Bashar al-Assad was gassing his own people with sarin gas. Okay, we have a caller on the line, Daniel in British Columbia. Aloha, Daniel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Michael. Yeah, I wanted to reiterate something that Peter from Los Angeles brought up. And this was the former New York City Police Commissioner, Bernard Kerik, getting pardoned by Trump. If you'll remember, of course you do, the story about the passport landing in the rubble at World Trade Center came from his office.
Yes.
So I don't know about Trump. I think he thought getting to the bottom of 9/11 was something he used to talk about, but I don't think he really cares too much about that. Apparently he's friends with Larry Silverstein, being a New York developer.
Yes.
Also, Bernard Kerik was right beside Giuliani when Giuliani said, those towers are going to come down. So I think he was more or less Giuliani's handler. And I just thought I'd add that to the mix.
Well, thank you for that information. But yeah, I wondered about that particular pardon. And of course, Trump is now going on a sort of a pardon commutation frenzy. But Kerik, I kind of wondered about because, everyone talks about, fire damage and, the heat of reentry of spaceship. Let's just cover them all with that magic blast and flame-proof paper they use for the passports.
Exactly. Yeah. Another thing was this Kerik guy was in Israel in I think August of 2001, and he got a $250,000 from some rich Israeli, and that's why he went to jail in the first place, because he forgot to declare that on his taxes. So kind of interesting connection there. Yeah. So I wonder if that was some hush money or if that was a payment. Who knows? Just some more questions to ask, I guess, in the 9/11 saga.
Definitely. Well,
right.
We've got a pretty good idea what happened on 9/11. I mean, people want us to endlessly argue over the fine detail and the minutia, but we can all agree we got lied to by the government, and we need to get past talking about what happened on 9/11 and start asking, what do we do about it? What do we do about the fact that we live under a government that lies to us about 9/11, about Pearl Harbor, about the USS Maine, about torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, about the Lusitania, about Assad's sarin gas, about Saddam's nuclear weapons? How many more times are you going to have to be lied to before you're ready to stand up and say, you guys are full of bovine excrement and I am not listening to you anymore?
All right. I just want to remind your listening audience to donate to RBN and what really happened, because, it's us against them. So.
Pockets are empty. Okay, we're going to switch over to Frank, and thank you for the phone call, Daniel. We're going to switch over to Frank in Pennsylvania. Aloha, Frank. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, Mike. Yes, thank you for taking my call. Bernie Sanders, he gave out this wonderful program on how to pay for it. And I was waiting for him to say, how about get the troops out of Afghanistan? I mean, you want to pay for all these wonderful programs. What are we doing in Afghanistan for the last 20 years? And I got another idea, Bernie. You want to put this tax on transfer tax, on stock tax. How about put an excise tax, a tariff on countries that import to our country that use child labor, slave labor, and prison labor? How about that? How about pay for it with import taxes and tariffs? No, he didn't touch those issues. And I think he didn't touch it, Mike, is because, he did vote for the Afghanistan war. And maybe he's just avoiding it. But I can't see us being in Afghanistan one day longer than what we're on now. And I sure can't see putting all these taxes on payroll taxes, taxes. How about import taxes and tariffs? And that was just my view of the debate with Sanders, Mike. I could be off the mark, but I just didn't think he had all the high notes. So, disappointed, very disappointed in Sanders.
None of them brought up the huge amounts of money being spent on the war, other than as a positive thing. None of them brought up the idea of trying to divert all of these trillions of dollars that are going to the war machine back to taking care of this country. We're on a wartime economy. Nobody will admit it, but we're on a wartime economy.
Absolutely. We are. And we've been on a wartime economy since 9/11. And it's just been one mess into another foreign entanglement. But, like I said, Bernie is kind of like a BS artist. He's good at getting the young people because they were too young to remember his vote on the Afghanistan war. But he did want to go to war in Afghanistan, and we've been there. And, Mike, I don't even know what we're doing here now. I mean, We have troops in there. They're engaged, I know, in combat. There are FBOs, which forward operating bases. But for whose benefit? It's for our benefit. And that's never been brought up.
We got to protect the flow of the opium. We've got to protect the flow of the opium. You know, and that oil pipeline right of way, we got to protect that. And I'm sure that as part of the negotiations to end the Afghanistan war, which seems to at least have a bit of a start going on here, is they're going to say, we still want control of that pipeline right of way, and we want to make sure that the opium continues to flow. Because that opium, when the U.S. went on in there, I mean, the Taliban had all but shut it down. And the amount of opium coming out of Afghanistan under U.S. puppet rule went up 35 times the volume. And it's pouring into our country, it's pouring into our pharmacies, it's pouring onto our city streets. In fact, I saw a commercial the other day. They now have clinics for opioid addiction. And we're not talking about street drugs. We're talking about people who become addicted to opioids prescribed to them by their doctors and provided to them by the pharmacies.
Oh, absolutely, yes. The pharmaceutical-grade opioids are the biggest addiction problem we're having all over PA, everywhere. It's been all over. You're right. And this is something that Sanders will not address, and none of the Democrats are going to address it. Trump skirts around the issue. They're all disappointed. They know the opioid epidemic is destroying our country from the inside out, and they know that this war in Afghanistan is useless, and they know that the lack of tariffs to make our textiles competitive is coming from places like China and Vietnam that use child labor and prison labor and forced labor. I mean,
well, we're using prison labor too. Don't forget, we're using prison labor.
You know, you're right. You're right. However, at least we get to discuss it. In China, there's not much of a debate with their apparently that they don't have a debate about it. At least we are talking about it, and a lot of people are against it. You know, and I think when it reaches the politicians, yes, it will be addressed sooner or later. But in China, there's no open, honest debate about how they gain their labor force and how it undercuts American textiles and you could say electronics, about everything. They kill us on labor, and the labor rates are ridiculous, and they should be tariffed on that to make it more competitive for our people here. So you got to go to the grocery store. Well, not a grocery. I mean, textiles. You got to go to the textile, buy a shirt or something. You're paying $5 more, but at least you know it was made here. $10 more, you're paying made here. How many times we go out and buy clothes anyway? Not that much. I don't. But it's just something I think about. Spins around my head, Mike. Bernie is avoiding that Afghanistan war, and that's one of the big things that Trump promised to do, and he failed us. So I want to see, when is Bernie ever going to bring up Afghanistan war, and let's get the heck out of there, Mike. And that's just my view. I'm a little bit.
I'm in agreement
with everybody.
We ought to be getting out of all of these countries we're mucking about with. We've got problems in this country that are being neglected. The decay of our infrastructure, the decay of our roads, rail systems, dams, bridges. It's all coming apart. And, we have a government that is perfectly, they're in bed with the corporations to just get as much work product out of the people as they possibly can for the least amount of money going back.
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you so much. Keep up the good work, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Dave in Vancouver. Aloha, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello?
You're on the air. You're on the air.
I'm Don in Arizona.
You're Don.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Anyway,
Don,
I'm here. Bernie Sanders, I actually donated money to him in 2016, and I almost volunteered. I thought about volunteering to help out. I lived up in Iowa, and but they didn't really want me to help out because I was way out in the boondocks. They didn't want me knocking on the farmers' doors out there talking about Bernie, or anything, I don't think. I mean, I could have, but I turned it back. I said, this would be too much like a job. I'd have a boss trying to tell me what to do and stuff, so I said, no, I'm not going to do that. But I liked what he said at the time. I really liked what he said about Wall Street. He said these guys don't do anything. What do they actually do to make all their money? They shuffle papers around, and they play games. They play shell games, and if he did get elected, there would not be anybody, I don't think, from Goldman Sachs in his cabinet. You can't say that about Trump. Trump has had all kinds of people from Goldman Sachs. And
yes.
Trump kind of paid lip service to that he was going to, he kind of hinted that he might do something about the crooks in Wall Street. No, he didn't do anything about that. But Bernie, I'd like to see him get the nomination and debate Trump. Of course, he had a heart attack. We don't know if that was an accident or not. It could be. I mean, he knows he's an old man. Bernie Sanders, I don't know if you know this, he was the champion miler when he was in high school. But that doesn't mean he's still in good shape now. But I mean, it could have been an intentional heart attack, and we know that the so-called intelligence community can do that. But I'd like to see Bernie get the nomination and lose, and get in the debates with Trump and ask him. Bernie? I heard that he said that Netanyahu is basically a racist. Did he say that?
Yes, he did say that.
Yeah, so I mean,
I'd like to see him challenge. Racist.
I'd like to see him challenge Trump on the whole Israel issue, and maybe Trump would win, but he would have to face up to it that he's basically being towed around like that cartoon said. He's been towed around by Netanyahu like a dog on a leash. And so I'd like to see Bernie get it, but I'm not really afraid that he's going to turn the place into a communist. He was a representative for years and years and years, and he never really proposed. I don't think he proposed any communist legislation or anything in there. I mean, if he was president, he could not get any truly communist legislation through unless the Democrats had the House and the Senate. I wouldn't mind seeing Bernie win the election and have everything being Republican. But when it gets right down to it, it's not going to change my personal life a whole lot, no matter who the hell the president is, Mike. But we just follow it like it's football or something like that. I'll let you go, Mike. Thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to John in California. John, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. It's good to hear you back in form again. Is Claire coming back on Fridays?
Yeah, it won't be this Friday, probably the Friday after that. I'm just now getting this office and studio put back together, and yeah, I think probably a week from this coming Friday, Claire will finally be on the air again.
Well, good, because I missed her all this time. Listen, going on to health care, Bernie Sanders, whatever it is, and it's even in California local elections, it's all these mostly Democrats are talking about all this telling health care for all, high quality health care and all this stuff. And I question, I said, number one, define quality health care. What do they mean? And the other thing I say is, do we have a choice? What if we don't want regular doctors in that? Can we get what we want? Supplements, other alternative medicines? Is that part of your thing? And what I believe, if they want to do like national health care, whatever, socialize or stuff, give them this. You can go to a doctor once a year, have a physical examination, and maybe take a blood test and that, and find out, how you are, if there's things that you need to be done. They can tell you what to do, especially like nutrition, how to take care of yourself that way, not just all the drugs you need and all that stuff. Because like I said, I want alternative stuff. I use alternative medicine, other supplements and that, not toxic drugs. That's what they want to do that. What do you think of that, Mike?
I think that there should be allowance made for people to decide for themselves exactly what medical care they need. Unfortunately, I think under socialized medicine, because we saw the same model being used in the Soviet Union, the government will decide what medication that you're going to have. Now, that being said, the Soviets were open to a wider variety of medications. I mean, they were using hydrazine sulfate for cancer patients, and that's absolutely being blocked in this country.
Yeah, like I said, leave it if they really want to, and I don't get any answers from any of the sides about, what you want for medical care. Get out of the pharmaceuticals and that. That's same thing from just about everybody I look into or talk to or read about. Anyway, Mike, that's my take on it. Have a good day. Take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And getting on back to the news here, Dan Bongino was the man who exposed the media for their roles in promoting the now completely discredited collusion hoax. And since then, he's become an obsession in the same media. And he's out there saying it's almost like they're upset about something. I think maybe they are. I think the media the people in the media, for the most part, gotten a little too big for their britches, and they seem to have forgotten that their job is to simply observe and report, not make the news, not try and steer the minds of the American people, but that's exactly what they're doing, which is why there's an independent media. If the corporate media were doing the job we're all told they're supposed to be doing, there'd be no need for me to be doing this. I'd be off doing something else. As long as the corporate media continues to lie to you and talk to you about Saddam's nuclear weapons and Assad's sarin gas, I and everybody else here at Republic Broadcasting are going to be sitting at these microphones here. Ooh, okay. We're getting a breaking story. Apparently there's been a mass shooting in a Milwaukee brewery. Shots that made Milwaukee famous. 7 people have been shot. Oh, well, just when they needed a distraction. Okay, the Trump approval has hit 52%. That's 5 points above Obama at the same point in his presidency. Good for Trump on that one here. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Julian Assange, because he's in the middle of his extradition hearings over there in Great Britain. Sean Hannity is defending Julian Assange during his extradition trial and points to the Pentagon Papers, and that is a very valid point to make, because Julian Assange is not a spy. He is a publisher. And the Supreme Court ruled in the case of the Pentagon Papers against the New York Times and the Washington Post that publishers had a right, not just a right, a duty to publish, because the founding fathers gave us a free press to report on government wrongdoing. And in the case of the Pentagon Papers, the wrongdoing was they knew they couldn't win the war in Vietnam, but they let it go on for years because nobody wanted to stand up on TV and say, we've lost this one, it's time to bring the rest of our people home. And that was the crime there. And the Supreme Court said, yes, the publishers had to be allowed to publish and they had to be protected. Julian Assange is a publisher. He did not solicit the information that Chelsea Manning leaked to him. He did not ask for it. Therefore, he is not actually in violation of the Espionage Act. And the US government has now admitted nobody got harmed by the revelation of this information. Nobody was injured, nobody was killed. Hoping cooler heads will prevail over there. Russia Today did a documentary. Basically, it's called Media Stan. And the whole point of this is that every journalist, corporate or independent, should feel a cold, icy hand running down their spine. More about this when we come back from station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And right about now, Donald Trump should be starting his press conference. Okay, Brett Baer just came on Fox News, and he's got the little ash mark on his forehead. It is Ash Wednesday, and that's where Claire has gone to. A little bit of details here on the Milwaukee shooting. They're calling it one of the worst shootings in Wisconsin history. 6 people are dead, and the shooter also died. And the police are currently sweeping the campus of Molson Coors. All righty, let's see now. Getting on back to the news here. So we were talking about this story. Every journalist should feel a cold, icy hand running down their spine. Because if Julian Assange, being a publisher, is put in prison for being a publisher for no other reason than being a publisher, then there are no rules protecting the media, corporate or otherwise. And it's rather ironic that today's thought for the day at the top of whatreallyhappened.com is when you hear a tyrant talking against the free press, you are dealing with a tyrant. So, anyway. Julian Assange is being prosecuted for revealing human rights violations. This is coming from the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Niels Melzer. And he discusses the threat Assange's persecution poses to press freedom, why the corporate media is slowly starting to support the WikiLeaks founder, the allegations Assange faced in Sweden, government not cooperating with him despite his UN mandate, and more. I hope the British court does not extradite him. I think they probably will. And he's not going to get a fair trial in this country. They They want to make an example out of him. Okay, let's talk about Harvey Weinstein, because I still think he's going to try and get out of jail. And along that line, I love this headline. This is from the Daily Mail. Prison officials fear Harvey Weinstein may try to kill himself like Jeffrey Epstein, and they could house him in a private section of Rikers Island with round-the-clock surveillance. Well, they sort of kind of had that on Epstein, and Epstein still did something. We're not exactly sure what. So is Weinstein going to fake his own death, fake a suicide, and then he and Epstein will spend the rest of their retirement in the Cayman Islands chasing girls and playing checkers? It's amazing. Okay. Hillary Clinton, of course, is facing a little bit of heat because she accepted donations from Harvey Weinstein. And it's not, we don't know for a fact that she knew what Weinstein was doing back when she got the donations. But Hillary Clinton's defense was everyone got money from Weinstein, not just hers, but went on to say it's time for an accounting at his rape trial. All right, so it's time to talk about the coronavirus, COVID-19. Now they're calling it the Wu flu, as in Wuhan flu. Wu flu. I like that. Sounds like a dog. Wu flu. Apparently, infections have now popped up in Germany, Switzerland, Croatia, Iraq, Spain, Algeria, Austria, and Brazil. The one in Brazil has finally been confirmed. At first, they said it was suspected. Cases are exploding in Italy by 45% in just one day. So in the past 36 hours or so, the coronavirus spread has now been confirmed in a slew of new countries. And already confirmed in Belgium, Lebanon, Finland, Sweden, Egypt, Sri Lanka, Israel, Cambodia, Nepal, Afghanistan, Russia, many other countries. So now it's down there in South America. And it's very frustrating that Johns Hopkins has now shut off public access to that incident map. And we're still not getting a lot of information. Somebody did send me a breakdown of deaths according to age, and it is hitting the elderly much harder than other people. The elderly, if you're above the age of, I think it said 70, again, it really does hit the elderly very, very hard. And I think it was something like 16, 17%. All right, the CDC came out earlier today and said that a Wu flu outbreak is now inevitable in the United States of America, and Americans should prepare for disruptions. And they say it's a question of when and not if. So now they're saying be prepared for the disruptions. Now, the good news coming out of China, and it's not being reported, is that infections there have plateaued. It is no longer growing exponentially, proving that China's system of quarantine seems to be working. And Tedros Adhanom, Director General of the World Health Organization, came on out and said, we're encouraged by the continued decline in cases in China. They found that the epidemic peaked and plateaued between the 23rd of January and the 2nd of February, and it's been declining steadily ever since. And that's good news if it's correct, not sure, and not just for China. With no preparation and relatively primitive public health networks compared to those of developed nations, the epidemic stabilized in roughly 4 weeks, probably due to China's fast and large quarantines. And that's good news because other nations are relying on quarantines to contain the infection. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, the White House has unveiled a $2.5 billion emergency coronavirus plan. And I know compared to military spending, that doesn't seem like a lot, but at least it's a start. And the White House Monday sent lawmakers a request for $2.5 billion to address the deadly Wu flu outbreak, whose rapid spread and threat to the global economy rocked financial markets. The White House Budget Office said the funds are for vaccines, treatment, and protective equipment. This request was immediately slammed by Democrats as insufficient and came as Wu flu fears were credited with Monday's 1,000-point drop on the Dow Jones Industrial Average and increasingly seen as a potential political threat to President Donald Trump. I'm not sure how real that is. I mean, if the economy tanks, that's definitely going to be the death knell for Trump's reelection. But there's been a lot of bad decision making at all levels, including flying back those infected people from the Diamond Princess. And Trump didn't do that. Trump was opposed to that. So was the CDC. So anyway, Trump is having his press conference. It's not, wait a minute, here we go. Apparently there is a shortage of the N95 masks. And Azar is ordering an immediate procurement of more of those. Well, I thought maybe that was going to be the press conference, but it doesn't seem to have started yet. Or if it started, Fox News isn't carrying it, which would surprise me. Now, Trump is saying the U.S. is very close to creating a Wu flu vaccine. Well, Trump can say that, but the reality is it's going to take a minimum of a year, year and a half, maybe even 2 years to perfect a vaccine that actually works. Maybe they're going to take an existing vaccine and say, oh, see, this works against it, buy it, stick it in your arm. Remember, these are the same people who told us back in 2007 that the subprime is contained. Of course, the year after that, it all fell apart. So now they're saying Wu flu is contained. Mitt Romney is out there saying that the Trump administration is substantially unprepared for the Wu flu outbreak. And given Trump's statements on it, I would say yes. When you're dealing with something like this, when you're dealing with something that is bordering on being a true pandemic, you err on the side of caution. You don't kick back and say it's no big deal and hope for the best. And it's true that SARS was nowhere near as bad as people were thinking. MERS was nowhere near as bad as people were thinking. The when pigs fly flu from 2009 was nowhere near as bad as people were thinking. But sooner or later, something nasty is going to come along. It's an historical inevitability. And erring, use the precautionary principle. Err on the side of caution. We don't know really what this is potentially going to do. A lot of the baseline information still hasn't been locked down. Nobody's really sure what the incubation period is. Nobody is really sure how many people are carrying this virus who are not displaying symptoms and don't go to the doctor and don't get tested. We just don't know. The state of California has tested 0 people for coronavirus. Remember, there's 8,000 people under self-quarantine up in San Francisco. All testing is being done by the CDC, which so far has tested fewer than 200 Californians. Even the movie Contagion, they were operating much more efficiently. We should get that film's director over here running the CDC. All righty. Hundreds of London Chevron workers have been sent home over fears of the Wu flu. San Francisco has declared a state of emergency. Mayor London Breed declares a state of emergency over the coronavirus amid intensifying worldwide concern about the spread of this new coronavirus. And it's going to ramp up the city's efforts to prepare for and confront potential cases. Now, to the best of my knowledge, nobody in San Francisco has it yet, but everybody's worried. San Francisco, major travel hub, especially for flights coming from China. And, you go over to the airport and you look at the arriving flights. Planes are still coming in from Italy, from China, from Taiwan, from various hotspots around the world. The planes are still coming. Wu flu could be completely around the globe in 36 hours. We don't know because, again, we don't know what the incubation periods is. There's one documented case of an incubation period of 27 days because they know who they got it from, and it was 27 days before they started showing symptoms. So a 2-week quarantine may not be enough. Over in the European Union, officials are refusing to implement border controls to stop coronavirus. And especially the concern is Italy, where the number of confirmed cases in Italy has soared from 3 to 322 in the space of only 5 days. 10 deaths. But authorities insist that the Schengen area, which abolishes passport checks and border controls between the 26 European states, must not be compromised. Isn't it 25 now with Britain having stepped out? Okay. Well, no sign of a press conference yet. Now this, in a very dark way, is kind of a humorous story because Iran's deputy health minister was on TV telling people not to panic over the Wu flu. And he didn't look well on TV, and people were saying, what the heck was going on? Well, it turns out he's now tested positive for the Wu flu. If your health minister is getting it, if your deputy health minister is getting it, then it's definitely gotten around here. Anyway, let's see. Despite some of the trappings of a modern society, Iran is still essentially a third world country, which makes them susceptible to epidemics like the Wu flu that's sweeping the world. Now, Iran insists that their lethality rate is 18%. China says it's 2.3%. Other countries with better medical care are saying it's somewhat lower. But 18% puts it right in the same ballpark as the 1918 Spanish influenza, which, of course, had nothing to do Spain. All righty, let's see. They're talking about the Coors campus attack here. All right, let's talk about the international news here. U.S. troops are arriving in Germany for Defender Europe 20 military maneuvers, and it looks like the U.S. is getting ready to attack Russia. It won't end well. It will be the end of America and most of us who live here. Thank you, Donald Trump. Well, Trump is unfortunately going along with this war agenda, but it's not like he created it. We've seen this war agenda going on all the way back to 2001, and probably a little bit before then, when they were saying we need a new Pearl Harbor to galvanize popular support to go into Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and all these other places. Remember the Project for the New American Century all during the 1990s? They were writing these policy papers saying, we're the only remaining superpower on earth. It's time for us to start acting like it. Well, Trump is just going along with it, which he promised us he wasn't going to do that, but then he's broken so many of his campaign promises. So this massive transatlantic military exercise has gotten underway with over 40,000 U.S. troops and military vehicles expected to arrive in Europe. It's the largest U.S. troop movement across the Atlantic in 25 years. Really, really serious about it. Okay, Turkey is reportedly positioning, or rather repositioning tanks closer to the Syrian border with plans to redeploy them into Idlib. Erdogan is vowing Turkey will not take a step back in Idlib. Them fighting words there, buddy. Okay, now getting on back to Crimea. Russia is getting ready to build a $1 billion highway to Crimea, and this is the next part of the $7.7 billion Road Links project, which is a highway, bridges, a rail line. And when Russians go on vacation, the two most popular destinations are Crimea and the Krasnodar region. Getting from one to the other has never been an easy task. Despite plans going back to 1903, it took until 2018 for a road bridge linking the adjacent destinations. It's Europe's longest bridge at almost 17 kilometers. Now, Moscow plans a $1.5 billion highway to dramatically cut journey times. The first section will be 68 kilometers long and is slated to cost almost $919 million, with the length of the entire route eventually reaching 119 kilometers. They're very serious about that. Russia's building roads. They're building bridges. We're building bombs. We're building napalm. We're building warships. Not very good ones, by the way. Israel's Netanyahu is threatening Gaza with all-out war if missile attacks continue. Now, here's the problem with that. We don't know to what extent the missile attacks coming out of Gaza into Israel are being done by agent provocateurs. And right now, Netanyahu could use an all-out war with anybody to bolster his re-election chances next month. So Israel will stop at nothing to ensure its security, goes the saying, and may well launch a broad military campaign against Gaza if the local armed groups continue with missile strikes. Apparently, on Monday, there was another attack. Some 50 rockets were fired from Gaza at Israeli territory, 90% of them intercepted. Missile strikes were met with a harsh response, with the Israeli Defense Forces confirming on Twitter that multiple strikes against targets in Gaza have been carried out. Okay. Talked about the increase in drugs out of Afghanistan. The U.S. has now imposed sanctions on entities in Russia and China over support of Iran's missile program. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said earlier this month that Tehran did not need anyone's permission to continue boosting its military capabilities and developing its missile program. And no, he doesn't. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced that Washington would impose sanctions on 13 entities in Russia, China, Iraq, and Turkey for supporting Iran's missile program. If Iran wants missile parts, they buy them from the good old US of A. Except we can't make that kind of thing anymore. That's why our military and Boeing are having to buy rocket engines from Russia. All this arm twisting to get people to buy American, and we don't have anything to sell. And in the latest embarrassment for the military-industrial complex, our newest fast attack submarine suffered structural damage to its stealth coating. The USS Colorado, which is a Virginia-class attack submarine, was photographed with large sections of the stealth coating, known as an anechoic coating, missing on its starboard side. This is basically these sound-deadening tiles. It's an outer skin. It's a sonar-absorbing material that is supposed to make the vessel virtually undetectable. But apparently when the submarine is going at speed, these things will just peel off. Well, gee, how about, you know, we get some Gorilla Glue out there or something. And by the way, that is good stuff. I got some over the weekend. And so, yeah, if that anechoic coating comes off the side, then sonar can detect that ship. That boat, I'm sorry, they call submarines boats, even though some of them, the Ohio class, are like the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. All right, we're going to be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. So before the commercial break, we were talking about the Virginia-class attack submarine, the USS Colorado. Apparently was returning from its first deployment, missing large sections of the acoustic tiles that are supposed to make it stealthy. So I don't know what it is with our military-industrial complex. And more than that, why are we not hearing Congress stand up and say, look, we're giving you guys so much money. Why are you sending us this junk? You know, Harry Truman actually did that. Before he became vice president, before he became president, he made his fame on going out to these military contractors and saying, look, you're not getting any more money until you actually start producing the things that we need you to produce. You know, and this was at a time when we weren't even really at war yet. You know, we were providing stuff to Great Britain under Lend-Lease, which was a violation of our neutrality. And but yeah, he'd go on out and he'd say, look, we gave them all this money to build this factory and there's nothing but an empty lot there. Then we have the Zumwalt, which is very unstable, not as stealthy as they wanted it to be. The problems with the F-22 and the F-35, the Independence class and Freedom class littoral combat ships, they're going to scrap that whole program and start over from scratch. That's how bad that is. Huge, vast amounts of money just being wasted on all this stuff. Okay, so let's talk about the economic news here. Apparently, the 10-year Treasury yield has hit the lowest level in modern history. Kocher Lakota is calling for a 25 to 50 basis point cut. And interestingly enough, Wells Fargo has now paid more in criminal penalties than it paid in interest to its depositors. I think there's a problem there. Definitely think there is a problem there. General Electric cut 78,000 workers in 2019 amid stabilization efforts to avoid bankruptcy. And it's too early to write an obituary for GE, but certainly this iconic American company, as are so many other iconic American companies, has stumbled toward the brink of failure after once being a darling on Wall Street. GE has been a corporate shipwreck for the last 10 years, where infamous Madoff whistleblower Harry Markopolos warned in late 2019 the company's cash situation is a lot worse than the company's filings would suggest. Markopolos said the accounting fraud that GE has conducted would be more significant than Enron and WorldCom combined. That is saying something. Shipping at the Port of Los Angeles is down 25% in volume. Supply chains are already starting to collapse now. There's warehouses full of stuff here in the country, except for surgical masks, apparently. But come April, you're really going to start feeling the pinch. The IEA is out there saying that the coronavirus may hit oil demand growth more than expected. And because demand has now dropped precipitously in China, they're flooding the market with fuel because local demand is really down. And that's going to drive fuel prices down, which is good for you, but it's also going to put the shale oil companies in trouble. Over in New York City, hotel loans are defaulting at an alarming rate as room rates plunge and tourism tumbles. And I imagine that's probably true across the entire country. People are going to start staying at home. I saw an aviation map of China. You know, the number of aircraft in the air, that's way, way down. Way, way down. But getting on back to this story, more and more New York City hotels are defaulting on their mortgages, signaling an alarming trend in the industry as challenging market fundamentals and new supply act as headwinds for the industry. This has resulted in room rates declining and sites like Airbnb gaining traction in the market, according to The Real Deal. The main metric to watch is the average daily room rate, which has dropped in New York City to its lowest point since at least 2013, $255.16, according to STR. More than 22,000 new hotel rooms remain in the pipeline as well, which will further add to the supply glut and likely push room rates even lower. And then, of course, you have all those apps which find you an advantageous rate. When they're getting close to the evening and the rooms, they've got vacancies, they'll let them go for pennies on the dollar. Okay, Illinois is realizing it has no money in its so-called rainy day fund. They want to play catch up with the rainy day fund in what is likely the worst possible time. With 11 years of bull market behind us and a pandemic that's starting to make its way across the globe, it's only now that Governor Pritzker has decided he wants to help bolster the state's safety net. He'll be playing catch up to many other states who used the last decade to bolster their respective states' fund, meaning they'll take the tax money, they'll invest it in the markets, they'll make a profit. The profit goes into contingency funds, if not somebody's pocket. The Democratic governor is proposing putting $500 million from the state's surplus into a budget stabilization fund this year, and then doing the same thing in 2021 if voters approve an income tax referendum currently before the state. Good luck. The fund was almost depleted in 2017. We'll be right back after these few words. Anyway, welcome back to our show here, and they're just getting ready to crank up this press conference with Donald Trump and a whole bunch of CDC officials. So we'll see what he's going to say. Unfortunately, for some reason, the closed captioning has stopped working on our cable TV feed, so I can't read what they're trying to say. I'll try and lip read, but I'm not very good at that sort of thing. All right, getting on back to Philip Haney. Now, Philip Haney was this Obama-era whistleblower who blew the whistle on some unsavory things, and he was found dead of a gunshot wound to his chest near his car, and immediately it was all over the news. Suicide, obvious suicide, suicide, suicide. And I call that into question because the gunshot wound was to his chest, and by and large, men who commit suicide with a firearm will shoot themselves in the head because they realize the bullet going into the brain makes the death about as painless as you can get. Women tend to shoot themselves in the chest because they don't want to mess up their due. So the coroner for the Amador County Sheriff's Office in California criticized the spread of misinformation surrounding the death of Philip Haney, saying it's extremely premature. Okay. And to deem it as suicide. Okay. Just give me a second here. RBN is telling me they have the feed direct from the White House website, and I'm asking if we can legally play it. Okay. So what happens is when Donald Trump comes on, we're going to have the live feed from the press conference as soon as Donald Trump shows up where he's not there. Have you ever noticed that when he does a press conference, he's always late? He wants the tension to build. He wants to make sure people are going to be paying attention to him. So until Donald Trump shows up here, skin on back to Roger Stone, and apparently the hearing is still going on. There has not been a decision yet one way or the other on a new trial, but they are questioning that jury foreperson. And apparently the juror has now been named Tomika Hart, and she's having to respond to accusations. She provided misleading answers about her political bias during jury selection, which Stone and his attorneys say justifies a new trial. And Hart said she stood by the answer she gave during selection and said she could fairly act as a juror in the case. She said in a written questionnaire at the time that she did not remember ever posting about Stone or other figures involved in the case. That was a flat-out lie. It's absolutely a flat-out lie. Okay. Apple and Tesla are under fire over a software engineer's fatal autopilot crash. The Ntsb has criticized Tesla, Apple, and road safety regulators in the report from its nearly 2-year investigation into the fatal crash of Apple software engineer 38-year-old Walter Huang. Huang was driving his Tesla Model X P100D SUV with autopilot drive assistant enabled when he crashed into a barrier on March 23rd, 2018 in Mountain View, California. However, it came out that because this guy was convinced the autopilot would definitely keep his car where it was supposed to be. Apparently, he was playing a video game at the time of the crash. Now, overall, I like the idea of the Tesla. If I had money, I would have one, but I would never use the autopilot. I absolutely would not use the autopilot. I think the technology is not yet robust. All right. Oh, there's Donald Trump. And we're going to try and get his audio. Okay. Apparently, the White House website.
Extend my deepest condolences to the victims and families in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Earlier today, a wicked murderer opened fire at a Molson Coors Brewing Company plant, taking the lives of 5 people. A number of people were wounded, some badly wounded. Our hearts break for them and their loved ones. We send our condolences. We'll be with them. And it's a terrible thing, terrible thing. So our hearts go out to the people of Wisconsin and to the families. Thank you very much. I've just received another briefing from a great group of talented people on the virus that is going around to various parts of the world. We have, through some very good early decisions that were actually ridiculed at the beginning, we closed up our borders to flights coming in from certain areas, areas that were hit by the coronavirus and hit pretty hard. And we did it very early. A lot of people thought we shouldn't have done it that early, and we did, and it turned out to be a very good thing. And the number one priority from our standpoint is the health and safety of the American people, and that's the way I viewed it when I made that decision. Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low. We have the greatest experts in the world, really in the world, right here. People that are called upon by other countries when things like this happen. We're ready to adapt, and we're ready to do whatever we have to as the disease spreads, if it spreads. As most of you know, the level that we've had in our country is very low, and those people are getting better, or we think that in almost all cases, the better are getting. We have a total of 15. We took in some from Japan. You heard about that because they're American citizens, and they're in quarantine, and they're getting better too. But we felt we had an obligation to do that. It could have been as many as 42, and we found that it was just an obligation we felt that we had. We could have left them, and that would have been very bad, I think, American people. And they're recovering. Of the 15 people, the original 15, as I call them, 8 of them have returned to their homes, to stay in their homes until fully recovered. 1 is in the hospital, and 5 have fully recovered. And 1 is, we think, in pretty good shape. And it's in between hospital and going home. So we have a total of, 15 people, and they're in a process of recovering, with some already having fully recovered. We started out by looking at certain things. We've been working with the Hill very, very carefully, very strongly, and I think we have very good bipartisan spirit for money. We were asking for $2.5 billion, and we think that's a lot. But the Democrats and I guess Senator Schumer wants us to have much more than that. And normally in life, I'd say we'll take it. We'll take it. If they want to give more, we'll do more. We're going to spend whatever's appropriate. Hopefully, we're not going to have to spend so much, because we really think we've done a great job in keeping it down to a minimum. And again, we've had tremendous success beyond what people would have thought. Now, at the same time, you do have some outbreaks in some countries. Italy and various countries are having some difficulty. China, you know about where it started. I spoke with President Xi. We had a great talk. He's working very hard, I have to say. He's working very, very hard. And if you can count on the reports coming out of China, that spread has gone down quite a bit. The infection seems to have gone down over the last 2 days. As opposed to getting larger, it's actually gotten smaller. In one instance where we think it's somewhat reliable, it seems to have gotten quite a bit smaller. With respect to the money that's being negotiated, they can do whatever they want. I mean, we'll do the 2.5. We're requesting 2.5. Some Republicans would like us to get 4, and some Democrats would like us to get 8.5, and we'll be satisfied whatever it is. We're bringing in a specialist, very highly regarded specialist, tomorrow, who works actually at the State Department, very, very tremendously talented in doing this. I want you to understand something that shocked me when I saw it, that I spoke with Dr. Fauci on this, and I was really amazed, and I think most people are amazed to hear it. The flu in our country kills from 25,000 people to 69,000 people a year. That was shocking to me. And so far, if you look at what we have with the 15 people, and they're recovering, one is pretty sick, but hopefully will recover. But the others are in great shape. But think of that, 25,000 to 69,000. Over the last 10 years, we've lost 360,000. These are people that have died from the flu, from what we call the flu. Hey, did you get your flu shot? And that's something. Now, what we've done is we've stopped non-U.S. citizens from coming into America from China. That was done very early on. We're screening people, and we have been at a very high level, screening people coming into the country from infected areas. We have in quarantine those infected and those at risk. We have a lot of great quarantine facilities. We're rapidly developing a vaccine, and they can speak to you. The professionals can speak to you about that. The vaccine is coming along well, and in speaking to the doctors, we think this is something that we can develop fairly rapidly, a vaccine for the future, and coordinate with the support of our partners. We have great relationships with all of the countries that we're talking about, some fairly large number of countries. Some it's one person, and many countries have no problem whatsoever, and we'll see what happens. But we're very, very ready for this, for anything, whether it's going to be a breakout of larger proportions or whether or not we're, we're at that very low level. And we want to keep it that way. So we're at the low level. As they get better, we take them off the list so that we're going to be pretty soon at only 5 people. And we could be at just 1 or 2 people over the next short period of time. So we've had very good luck. The Johns Hopkins, I guess it is a highly respected, great place. They did a study, comprehensive, the country's best and worst prepared for an epidemic. And the United States is now, we're rated number 1. We're rated number 1 for being prepared. This is a list of different countries. I don't want to get in your way, especially since you do such a good job. This is a list of the different countries. United States is rated number 1, most prepared. United Kingdom, Netherlands, Australia, Canada, Thailand, Sweden, Denmark, South Korea, Finland. This is a list of the best rated countries in the world by Johns Hopkins. We're doing something else that's important to me because he's been terrific in many ways, but he's also very good on health care. And we really followed him very closely. A lot of states do. When Mike was governor, Mike Pence of Indiana, they've established great health care. They have a great system there, a system that a lot of the other states have really looked to and changed their systems. They wanted to base it on the Indiana system. He's very good. And I think, and he's really very expert at the field. And what I've done is I'm going to be announcing exactly right now that I'm going to be putting our Vice President, Mike Pence, in charge. And Mike will be working with the professionals, doctors, and everybody else that's working. The team is brilliant. I spent a lot of time with the team over the last couple of weeks, but they're totally brilliant, and we're doing really well. And Mike is going to be in charge, and Mike will report back to me. But he's got a certain talent for this, and I'm going to ask Mike Pence to say a few words, please. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. President. President Trump's made clear from the first days of this administration we have no higher priority than the safety, security, health, and well-being of the American people. And from the first word of an outbreak of the coronavirus, the President took unprecedented steps to protect the American people from the spread of this disease. He recounted those briefly, but the establishment of travel restrictions, aggressive quarantine effort of Americans that are returning, declaration of a public health emergency, and establishing the White House Corona Task Force are all reflective of the urgency that the President has brought to a whole of government approach. As a former governor from the state where the first MERS case emerged in 2014, I know full well the importance of presidential leadership, the importance of administration leadership, and the vital role of partnerships of state and local governments and health authorities in responding to the potential threat of dangerous infectious diseases. And I look forward, Mr. President, to serving in this role, bringing together all the members of the Corona Task Force that you've established, HHS, CDC, DHS, the Department of Transportation, and State. This team has been, at your direction, Mr. President, meeting every day since it was established. My role will be to continue to bring that team together, to bring to the President the best options for action to see to the safety and well-being and health of the American people. We'll also be continuing to reach out to governors, state and local officials. In fact, in recent days, the White House met with over 40 state, county, and city health officials from over 30 states and territories to discuss how to respond to this, to the potential threat of the coronavirus. We'll be working with them in renewed ways to make sure they have the resources to be able to respond. And as the President said, we'll be adding additional personnel here at the White House to support our efforts on the President's behalf. We'll also be working with members of Congress to ensure that the resources are available for this whole of government response, and we'll be working very closely with Secretary Azar and his team that have done an outstanding job communicating to the public to ensure the American people have the best information on ways to protect themselves and their families, and also that the public has the most timely information on the potential threat to the American people. Mr. President, as we've been briefed, while the threat to the American public remains low of a spread of the coronavirus, you have directed this team to take all steps necessary to continue to ensure the health and well-being of the American people. And the people of this country can be confident that under your leadership, we will continue to bring the full resources of the federal government in coordination with our state and local partners to see to the health and well-being and to the effective response to the coronavirus here in the United States of America. With that, the President has asked me to recognize the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, and also the Deputy Director of CDC, Dr. Ann Shockley, for remarks. Secretary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vice President, and thank you, Mr. President, for gathering your public health experts here today and for your strong leadership in keeping America safe. And I just want to say I could not be more delighted that you've asked the Vice President, my old friend and colleague, to lead this whole of government approach with us under the Emergency Support Function number 8. As of today, we have 15 cases of COVID-19 that have been detected in the United States, with only one new case detected in the last 2 weeks. We also have 3 cases among Americans repatriated from Wuhan and 42 cases among Americans repatriated who had been stuck on the Diamond Princess in Japan. The President's early and decisive actions, including travel restrictions, have succeeded in buying us incredibly valuable time. This has helped us contain the spread of the virus, handle the cases that we have, and prepare for the possibility that we will need to mitigate broader spread of infections within the United States. The President's actions, taken with the strong support of his scientific advisors, have proven to be appropriate, wise, and well calibrated to the situation. We're grateful for the hard work that healthcare workers, first responders, communities, and state and local leaders have put into the response so far. Because of this hard work and the President's leadership, the immediate risk to the American public has been and continues to be low. Our containment strategy has been working. At the same time, what every one of our experts and leaders have been saying for more than a month now remains true. The degree of risk has the potential to change quickly, and we can expect to see more cases in the United States. That is why we've been reminding the American public and our state, local, and private sector partners that they should be aware of what a broader response would look like. CDC has recommended that the American public, and especially state and local governments, businesses, and other organizations, should refresh themselves on how they would respond in the event that the situation worsens. We're encouraging Americans to learn what future steps might be necessary to keep themselves and their communities safe. Knowing these potential steps now can help keep the risk to you and your community low. Americans can find useful information at cdc.gov/COVID, COVID-19. And we're working closely with government and private sector partners to educate them about preparedness. Finally, we've begun working with Congress to secure the funding that we need. There are 5 major priorities in the White House request to Congress that the White House made on Monday. These priorities are: first, expanding our surveillance network; second, support for state and local governments work; third and fourth, development of therapeutics and vaccines; and fifth, manufacturing and purchase of personal protective equipment like gowns and masks. As chairman of the President's Coronavirus Task Force, I'm committed to providing regular updates from our coordinated interagency process. We've had our top public health leaders, like those joining me here today, speaking to the media many times per day to inform the American public. The Trump administration is going to continue to be aggressively transparent, keeping the American people and the media apprised of the situation and what everyone can do. With that, I'm going to hand things over to Dr. Ann Shockley. Dr. Shockley is the senior career official at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the principal deputy director with an over 30-year career at the CDC in public health and as a member of the United States Public Health Service Commission Corps. So Dr. Schuchat, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Secretary. As you know, this has been a difficult and challenging time, and our hearts go out to the individuals who have been directly affected by the virus and to all those who have been working tirelessly in responding to it. Our aggressive containment strategy here in the United States has been working and is responsible for the low levels of cases that we have so far. However, we do expect more cases, and this is a good time to prepare. As you heard, it's the perfect time for businesses, healthcare systems, universities, and schools to look at their pandemic preparedness plans, dust them off, and make sure that they're ready. And we have lots more information at the CDC's website and in partnership on how to do that. But it's also a really good time for the American public to prepare and for you to know what this means for you. The coronavirus that we're talking about is a respiratory virus. It's spread in a similar way to the common cold or to influenza. It's spread through coughs and sneezes. And so those everyday sensible measures that we tell people to do every year with the flu are important here. Covering your cough, staying home when you're sick, and washing your hands. Tried and true, not very exciting measures, but really important ways that you can prevent the spread of respiratory viruses. So the trajectory of what we're looking at over the weeks and months ahead is very uncertain, but many of the steps that we have taken over the past 15 years to prepare for pandemic influenza and our experience going through the 2009 H1N1 pandemic of influenza remind us of the kinds of steps that our healthcare system, our businesses, our communities and schools may need to take. We're in this together, all of government, the public and the private sector, and the CDC wants to make sure you have the best information available every day. Thank you.
I just want to give you a very quick update on the. My name is Dr. Tony Fauci. I'm the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at NIH. Just a very quick update on the countermeasure development in the form of vaccines and therapeutics. I had told this audience at a recent press briefing that we have a number of vaccine candidates and one prototype one to give you a feel for the time frame of a vaccine and what its impact might be now and in subsequent years, is that I told you we would have a vaccine that we would be putting into trials to see if it's safe and if it induces a response that you would predict would be protective in about 3 months. I think it's going to be a little bit less than that. It's probably going to be closer to 2 months. That would then take about 3 months to determine if it's safe and immunogenic, which gives us 6 months. Then you graduate from a trial, which is phase 1 of 45 people, to a trial that involves hundreds, if not low thousands of people to determine efficacy. At the earliest, an efficacy trial would take an additional 6 to 8 months. So although this is the fastest we have ever gone from a sequence of a virus to a trial, it still would not be any applicable to the epidemic unless we really wait about a year to a year and a half. Now, that means 2 things. One, the answer to containing is public health measures. We can't rely on a vaccine over the next several months to a year. However, if this virus, which we have every reason to believe it is quite conceivable that it will happen, will go beyond just a season and come back and recycle next year.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to have to pull away from the press conference now because we're at the end of our program. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller's program. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. And please spread the word about RBN. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We need your help to stay on the air and to keep on doing this. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.